What is Fidelity National Financial?
We are, among many things, the largest title insurance company and settlement services company in the United States. Whenever there's a real estate transaction, residential or commercial, our offices in the field, our title companies in the field, the people that are working with those closings, help make sure that it goes from open to close, working with either residential real estate agents or commercial attorneys. That's the core of what we do. As Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Innovation Officer, I have an opportunity to touch anything that deals with all of our brands. So any of the companies we work with, any of the brands that are associated with that, our sales and marketing efforts through a variety of the companies that we work with. I also have an opportunity to work with our real estate technology companies. So we've acquired SaaS companies that provide solutions to end users, not just internal technology, but end users, real estate agents, real estate professionals, others. So I touch all of that. And one of the things that I've had an opportunity to work with very, very closely is our inHere experience platform.
With real estate, when one thinks of it, it's a sort of a dry aesthetic. And your approach has been more of a friendly approach. What was the catalyst behind that?
Historically, we've been big circle people and services, right? When you think of a title company, you think of, hey, I know my local escrow officer, I know my local title person, I'm gonna go and we're gonna close a real estate transaction. It's very local in nature. That's a very personal and intimate, you get to know that person really well. They help you through this transaction, especially if you're a real estate agent working with a local escrow officer. That's a one-on-one relationship. Because of that, when you try to build software at scale for all these transactions and software that can help facilitate these transactions in a more transparent way, it has to capture that friendly or at least familiar relationship that you're used to. That person-to-person relationship has to carry over to the technology, or it's going to feel very, very bland, maybe even too systematic for a real estate transaction. So we've wanted to make it user-friendly. We wanted to make it more usable and to even dispel this idea that, hey, technology in the real estate space is hard, maybe it's complex, maybe it's not very user-friendly. So that was our goal.
Okay. So when you contacted Inspiring Apps to develop an app, the look and the branding was already in motion. The colors and the general aesthetic and the art direction was somewhat already established. Who was the driving force behind that?
I'd call it a team effort. Certainly, we benefited tremendously by bringing Inspiring Apps specifically into that equation. When we built the inHere experience platform and laid it out as part of this vision, we envisioned a mobile-first transaction management platform that would help a consumer and a real estate agent stay informed throughout this entire transaction. We wanted, like I said, it to be user-friendly. And so we worked towards that as we started to build mock-ups and think about what the brand should be and what should be included in that solution that we provide to agents and to consumers, buyers and sellers. So when we came to you, I would consider it a very rough brand outline and a very rough aesthetic. But yeah, we looked at what we liked, we looked at what was different, and we tried to put on paper what we felt would be maybe a little unique in the market.
You mentioned at the very beginning that not only do you have services for real estate professionals, you're also targeting the homeowner.
Correct.
So inHere has been developed, right? It's out there in the market. What are some of the challenges that you're facing with making the professional happy and meeting the homeowner's expectations?
If you think about a real estate professional, what we look at in that persona is actually quite wide in terms of age range, maybe even wide in terms of their familiarity with technology, certainly within a real estate transaction. But you're also dealing with a wide range of the number of transactions that someone might be juggling at one time. Consumers most often are dealing with one purchase transaction, right? They might be in a simultaneous transaction where they're being a seller and then a buyer. But if you think about it, they're really focused on one transaction. So one of the things that we tried to do was to think about how do we facilitate getting information, because that's the intent of inHere, is to keep people informed during a transaction. How do we give that real estate professional enough information that allows them to kind of see multiple transactions and the status of those transactions or the current milestones that the transactions have gone through? An added complexity is you have transaction coordinators that are often working with these real estate agents who are in the office. Mm-hmm. And then you have real estate professionals who by nature of their job should be kind of out of the office. And so you have this desktop view and this mobile view. But you've got to bring, if you will, kind of a dashboard feel to that real estate professional. So that's what we've struggled with in terms of trying to overcome. How do you give enough information that it doesn't feel like it's just a list of things, but how do you make it so that it's informative and not, oh great, another picture of a house, scroll, scroll, scroll. So we've tried to build enough user-friendly interaction, enough white space into solution so that there is a design system that can carry from the web to the mobile app for the professional user. Early on, we thought that the consumer would have their entirely own view, right? That they would have something different than what the real estate professional saw. What we're learning is that part of the continuity between the parties involved is being able to feel comfortable that what you are seeing as the real estate professional is the same thing that the consumer's seeing, the buyer or the seller. I don't know if we've solved it, but it's certainly something we talk about a lot, which is, all right, how do you give each of those users the experience they expect, but the information that they need without making it feel too complex or too sparse?
You mentioned white space, you mentioned not another picture of another house. When the app first launched, there was some photography, maps, icons, and slowly you transitioned over the years to using illustrations of people. What fueled that?
The reason why the illustrations made sense is we wanted to build a little bit more friendly environment, and we wanted to show or depict different scenes. Mm-hmm. We felt like illustrations was probably a cost-effective way to do that, and a way that made it a little easier to control that experience, or at least that view, that the aesthetic to the consumer or to the agent by using these. We could manipulate them more.
Right. So now that we've got the app, people are using it, you've had a brand switch, or at least a visual brand switch, which is a natural course of an app to develop. Are there parts of the app that the users have not discovered yet? Like some are using it, and what are those areas if they exist?
What we anticipated, but I don't think that we even yet understand fully, is when you build a native app of this nature and you're giving people information and you're able to push them information, you actually have a successful app if they don't necessarily have to go into it all the time, right? The intent isn't to suck them in and to consume their time, it's actually to give it back to them. So if we reach a status or a milestone change, or if a document's posted, or if there's a message that comes through, a lot of times that information can be pushed to the consumer, and what they see on their screen is sufficient. And so then you don't necessarily need to bring them into the app, except for the next time that they want to return and kind of revisit some of that information. So push notifications are an important aspect of the application. I think it's a very useful tool, but it also doesn't allow us to kind of see, well, what is the user clicking on? Are they going and looking at all their documents?
Right.
Because we're informing them as opposed to asking them to interact with us.
What demographic are you currently seeing utilizing all the features of the apps, or the majority of the features of the apps that you're hoping that they touch on?
If you think about home buyers, first-time home buyers are going to be younger. They're going to be more digital natives. But even recently, there's been some statistics that have come out that suggest that an older audience, an older demographic, are actually buying more homes right now. We look at the demographic of our professional users. Yes, there's a large swath of them that have been in the business for a long time, seasoned professionals. But also, real estate's a very attractive market for the young professional who wants to create their own business, to be their own entrepreneur and kind of grow something that they own and they are responsible for. What's difficult for us is to pin down a traditional age range. What we are focused on is the fact that the expectations of the consumer, professional or buyer or seller, the user of our technology, they're being informed by everything else that's out there in the marketplace. They're being informed with instant access. They're being informed with a cohesive experience from the web to a mobile app. They're being informed by on-demand information. That's their expectation. And if you think about it, every other part of our life, whether it be, hey, I'm going to go to the grocery store, I'm going to order this from online, I'm going to take a trip, I'm going to plan some travel, I'm going to go to my medical professional, we all have been taught that there's an online companion to your physical doctor's office, grocery store trip that you're planning, right? So there's an expectation of that. How do you do that when you're not going to have the familiarity with a real estate transaction because you're not doing it every day? A buyer doesn't buy a house every day. A seller doesn't sell a house every day. You got to make that user-friendly and easy, but you got to meet the expectation. A real estate professional doesn't want to become an expert in new technology. They just want to get the information they need to go on to the next thing. So you almost have to take the cues from the market and make sure that you don't think about your users in a silo. These aren't people who are interacting with you as a real estate company, full stop. These are consumers of the market, right? Their expectations are fed by the market. They don't want a different experience when it comes time to order groceries, plan a trip, go to the doctor, buy real estate. They want something similar. And we can actually leverage that so that when they get into our application, they know what to do because it works similar to how they do other parts of their life.
You were doing this all internally, and now you're working with an outside party. What is it like to collaborate with a company that has not been inside?
Part of what I think has been so phenomenal for our point of view is that it hasn't felt like a third party. It has felt like a part of the team. It has felt like an extension. We were only thinking of our real estate industry, and Inspiring Apps has experience across a variety of industries working with these same users just at different places in their journey. We enjoyed that. I think sometimes it can become very myopic to think about only your world, and Inspiring Apps gave us both technically as well as from a design perspective a lot of insight into what is out there, what should be the experience, how can you capitalize on what these users experience every day and bring that familiarity into an application that for a buyer and seller, they're not going to touch more than 45, 50 days for many years at a time. Working with Inspiring Apps, it felt very fluid. I think you were very kind to look at what we had done and say, we can work with that. But we really needed that expertise from a user experience, user interface, design point of view, as well as the technical experience to execute what we had in mind. We had a pretty clear vision, but to bring it to be required Inspiring Apps.